They fined me $450 for unauthorized parking on my own driveway, 3 citations in 14 days, and by the time I found the orange toe sticker curling in the morning sun, I knew the fight wasn't about paint lines, it was about control, and they just picked the wrong guy to push. Welcome to my channel. My name's Mark Danner. I live about 30 miles outside Tulsa and work as a county records analyst. I tell real stories about HOAs that cross the line and what happens when ordinary people learn the law better than those enforcing it. If you care about fairness and small-town sanity, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I always like knowing which corner of America I'm defending tonight. The first citation hit on a Tuesday. The paper was damp, ink bleeding through the notice taped to my garage door. Vehicle observed outside of approved parking envelope, section 8.2b. I'd parked my truck on the right half of my driveway, same spot for years. My wife Sarah thought it was a clerical mistake. The second citation landed that Friday, time-stamped 7:14 a.m. The third came after I sent an email asking for clarification. That one carried a threat of towing within 72 hours. I tried to be reasonable. I brought the notices to the HOA office, a single-story brick unit wedged between a dry cleaner and a vape shop. The president, Greg Powers, had the kind of calm smile that usually hides contempt. "Rules are rules," he said, sliding my letters back without reading them. "Uniformity keeps property values stable." "My driveway's concrete, Greg," I said. "It's literally part of my parcel." He tapped a laminated page. "The association controls visual continuity, even within private lots. The covenant is clear." Then he looked at me like I'd brought him an argument he'd already won. That night, I stood in the driveway with Sarah staring at the yellow Chica Alk X they'd drawn near my tire. "They can't tow it if it's not blocking anything," she said. "They can try," I told her. The thought of losing the truck wasn't just about wheels. It was the last thing my brother and I restored before he passed. Every dent and weld felt like a conversation we never finished. Over the next week, I photographed everything. Timestamps, chalk marks, board member vehicles parked halfway into the street. I printed the photos, labeled each with the minute and date. My neighbor, Mr. Keene, retired building inspector, wiry frame, thermos coffee always in hand, saw me working and asked what was going on. When I explained, he gave a soft, wheezy laugh. "Son, you ever look at their filings?" "Filings?" I asked. "County clerk site," he said, sipping. "Most folks forget HOAs have to register amendments like everybody else. Half the time, they miss the renewals." It was a simple tip, but it hit like caffeine. I logged into the county's record portal at midnight. The last renewal of Meadow Creek HOA's covenant, dated June 12, 2002, had a 20-year term. That meant it expired June 12, 2022. It was now October. They were 4 months past expiration. Knowledge nugget number 1. In many states, restrictive covenants tied to an HOA must be re-recorded or renewed before their stated term lapses, or they become legally unenforceable until revived by proper vote and filing. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I drove to the clerk's office, requested certified copies, and highlighted the dates in yellow. Sarah watched me assemble a binder thicker than our mortgage packet. "You're not going to start a war, are you?" she asked. "Not a war," I said. "Just a record." That afternoon, I noticed a new face across the street, muscular guy in a reflective vest taking photos of my house. When I stepped out, he ducked behind an HOA patrol car and drove off. I decided right then this wasn't only about my truck or my brother's memory. It was about everyone in Meadow Creek who'd ever been bullied into compliance because they didn't know the code. I started calling neighbors, single moms, retirees, a teacher who'd been fined for a non-compliant garden gnome. We met quietly in Keene's garage, folding chairs among paint cans and rakes. I showed them the covenant dates. Gasps and mutters filled the air. "They've been cashing our dues on an expired charter," I said. "Every notice they've sent since June is void." Keene leaned forward, tapping the folder. "Don't tell them yet. Let them overplay first." He was right. Let them tow, threaten, escalate, then show the receipts. Late that evening, Sarah found me under the porch light, flipping through the binder again. "You sure you want to go this far?" she asked. "They took the last project my brother and I built," I said. "They don't get to take our home next." The sound of crickets filled the pause between us. Somewhere down the block, A dog barked at the night. I didn't know it then, but the next morning, a flatbed truck with Meadow Creek security stenciled on the side would idle outside our house, chains clanking, while a man in uniform knocked on my door with a smirk. "Sir," he said, "we're here to tow the non-compliant vehicle." I stepped out holding a clipboard and camera. "Then you better document everything," I replied, "because starting today, so will I." The click of my shutter was the first sound of the battle. He squinted when the flash went off. "You can't record me without consent," he said, lowering his clipboard. "I can on my property," I replied. "Oklahoma's a one-party state. You just got informed." He glanced at the house number, then at the patrol car idling behind the tow truck. 2 HOA board members sat inside. Greg Powers in the passenger seat, sunglasses glinting, arms folded like he was watching a show he'd already paid for. I stepped down the porch steps, careful, slow. "You have a court order, or just Greg's blessing?" The driver looked uneasy. "We have authorization from the association." "Association's covenant expired 4 months ago," I said, flipping open the binder. "See that stamp? June 12, 2002, recorded book 784, page 61. 20-year term. You're operating without jurisdiction." Greg rolled down his window. "You think you found a loophole, Mark? The board extended it. Show me the filing." He didn't. He just smiled and signaled the tow guy again. That's when Keen appeared across the lawn in his slippers, holding his phone sideways. "You touch that truck," he called. "You're committing conversion under 21 OS 01720. You want to explain that to the sheriff?" The tow driver hesitated. I could hear his breath whistle. He stepped back. "Call me when you get a police escort," he muttered, then climbed in and drove off. Greg's window slid up. The car followed, gravel crunching. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but adrenaline, the kind that comes when you realize the rules don't belong only to them anymore. 2 days later, I received an email labeled Notice of Non-Compliance and Board Hearing. It cited obstruction of authorized enforcement personnel and warned of possible lien placement. That was their next play. Paperwork warfare. I brought the letter to my friend, attorney Lydia Shaw. She worked from a corner office stacked with statute books and smelled faintly of peppermint coffee. She flipped through the pages, eyes narrowing. "They're bluffing," she said. "To file a lien, they need standing. If the covenant lapsed, they don't have corporate authority. But we'll need more than that to end this cleanly. What's more, proof they collected dues or fines post-expiration. That's unauthorized assessment. Could qualify as unjust enrichment, or worse if intent's proven." I nodded, tapping my pen. They cashed everyone's checks, then start collecting statements, dates, amounts, copies, quietly. "On my way out," she added, "and Mark, don't poke them yet. Let them dig their own hole." I took that to heart. Over the next week, I documented everything. Mailbox timestamps, HOA patrol routes, Greg's truck parked overnight on a yellow curb he'd fined others for touching. Sarah helped compile spreadsheets after dinner. She didn't say much, but I saw the worry etched around her mouth each time I mentioned Greg's name. By Friday, our community group had grown from 6 neighbors to 19. Keen printed flyers disguised as neighborhood maintenance updates, but inside each was a single sentence. "Check your bank statement for HOA withdrawals after June 12, 2022. The responses came fast. Screen captures, PDFs, handwritten notes slid under my door. $125 dues from June. $75 fines from July. One senior, Mrs. Franklin, had paid $300 after they threatened to gate her oxygen delivery van. I took everything to Lydia. She organized the evidence by date, each entry labeled post-lapse transaction. Knowledge nugget number 2. When an HOA's corporate status lapses or its covenants expire, any subsequent assessments or penalties lack statutory authority. Collections can expose board members to personal liability. That night, I sat on the porch again, binder in my lap, flipping through what was essentially the HOA's confession. I could feel my brother's old wrench keychain in my pocket, a habit from when we rebuilt engines together. The metal had worn smooth where my thumb rubbed it. I whispered, "I'm doing it right this time, Mike." The next morning, a new citation arrived. Failure to maintain approved landscaping, it said. They were retaliating, hoping I'd lose patience. Sarah read it aloud and shook her head. They're just proving your point. I smiled thinly. Exactly. Mid-afternoon, Keen knocked. They are calling an emergency board meeting Monday night, he said. Agenda's one item. Disciplinary action against you. Good, I said. Let's give them a stage. Before he left, I asked, Keen, you ever thought about how far an HOA can actually go before the law snaps back? He grinned. I used to inspect city buildings, remember? The law doesn't snap. It grinds, slow and permanent. I knew then the grind was on my side. If you're watching this and you've dealt with an HOA like mine, I want to hear from you. Tell me how you stood up, or how you wish you had. And if you haven't yet, scroll down and leave a message for the HOA lurkers reading the comments. Let them know folks are done being bullied by clipboards. Monday night came. The board met in the clubhouse, a squat stucco building that smelled of stale coffee and fear of sunlight. Greg presided from the center seat, gavel poised like a sheriff from a B-movie. He called my name. I stood holding the binder. Sarah sat behind me, hand on my shoulder. Keen recorded from the back row. Mr. Danner, Greg said, you're accused of obstructing enforcement, defaming the board, and inciting discord among residents. How do you plead? I let the silence stretch until the clock ticked loud enough for everyone to hear. Then I laid the certified covenant on the table. I plead expired jurisdiction. Gasps rippled through the room. Greg's smirk faltered just enough for me to see the first crack. The sound of that phrase, expired jurisdiction, seemed to hang in the air longer than it should have. A ceiling vent rattled. Greg's gavel froze midair. What did you just say? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. I slid the paper toward him. County filing, book 784, page 61. Covenant expired June 12th. You've got no authority to fine, tow, or collect dues until renewed by 2/3 vote and re-recording. He turned to the HOA Association's so-called counsel, a man named Birch, who had the pinched look of someone paid to sound confident. Mr. Birch, that can't be right. Birch skimmed the document, his lips thinning. These covenants auto-renew unless the community votes to dissolve. Wrong statute, I said. Oklahoma Title 60, Section 852. It requires affirmative renewal before the term lapses. Your deadline passed. The room murmured. Sarah squeezed my shoulder once, small and fierce. Greg banged the gavel. Order. We'll verify this claim. Meanwhile, your fines stand. You can verify all you like, I said, collecting my binder. But the moment you threaten another tow, it's harassment under state law, and I'll document it. After the meeting, neighbors crowded around the exit. A few whispered thanks. Others looked nervous, afraid of being seen near me. I didn't blame them. Fear was Greg's real power. Outside, the night air felt heavy with rain. Keen joined me under the flickering lamppost. You got their attention, he said. Now keep your head down till we get the rest of the proof. We spent the next week in what I called the dig. Lydia helped me submit open records requests to the county treasurer, the Secretary of State, and the HOA's insurer. The data trickled in like pieces of a puzzle. Banking lapses, missing audit statements, and most damning, an insurance renewal listing an inactive corporate entity. Knowledge nugget number 3. Inactive corporate status means an HOA's officers lose the liability shield normally provided by incorporation. Any enforcement action during that period can expose them to personal lawsuits. I built charts, dates in red, statutes in blue. Sarah teased me that our dining table looked like a crime scene board. If this goes on, I'm framing your first legal victory, she said. I'll settle for peace and quiet, I told her, though deep down, I wanted accountability. Friday evening brought a new twist. A flyer appeared on every porch. HOA emergency fee adjustment, $250 per household for legal expense, says. It was their counterattack. They were trying to fund a fight with our own money. By Saturday morning, 23 residents had forwarded photos of the flyer to me. The outrage was spreading faster than their narrative. That afternoon, a local reporter named Nina Vargas knocked on my door. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, notepad in hand. I've been getting calls about Meadow Creek, she said. People say you found something about their charter? I showed her the certified document, careful not to over-explain. She whistled softly. That's huge if true. Mind if I verify at the clerk's office? Please do, I said. Everything I've got is public record. Sunday morning, her article hit the Tulsa County Chronicle. Expired covenant, active fines, Meadow Creek HOA faces legitimacy questions. My phone buzzed nonstop. Neighbors, reporters, one anonymous voicemail threatening to teach me respect for authority. The backlash came quick. That evening, Greg emailed the community accusing me of disseminating misinformation to destabilize governance. He CC'd the whole listserv, his digital version of a public flogging. Sarah read it and sighed. They're scared. I nodded. Good. Fear means movement. If you're watching this right now, tell me something. Where do you draw the line between community order and personal freedom? Should an HOA control how you use your own driveway, or just the common spaces? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. By Monday, the county clerk's office confirmed Nina's report. The HOA had indeed failed to renew. The email thread leaked. Someone inside the board sent me the confirmation stamped October 17, 2024, 9:41 a.m. Still, Greg doubled down. He called a special enforcement session, inviting security and a hired property manager named Dale to restore authority. That's when Lydia leaned across her desk and said, "It's ties. Me to prepare your leverage." I asked what she meant. She opened a folder labeled Parcel 47E. Inside was a plat map of the subdivision, the one showing common areas, the retention pond, playground, and access road. One parcel, 47E, was oddly highlighted. This strip, she said, runs beneath the main entrance sign. Turns out it's not common area. It was deeded separately during the original development. The bank sold it at auction last year. I blinked. Who bought it? She smiled. No one yet. It's still listed for $4,200 in back taxes. I stared at the map, realizing what she was implying. Whoever owned 47E controlled the land under the Meadow Creek sign, the electrical junction, and the main irrigation valve for the landscaping they bragged about in every brochure. That night, I drove past the sign. Brick pillars, gold lettering, uplights casting a glow over freshly mulched flower beds. Rain had left the asphalt shimmering. I could see the irrigation box labeled MC Valve 1. The idea took root then, quiet but certain. Sarah watched me study the map at the kitchen table. "Whatever you're planning," she said, "make sure it's legal." "It will be," I promised, "and poetic." I didn't tell her yet that I'd be at the county auction first thing Tuesday, check in hand. Tuesday morning smelled like copier toner and rain-damp carpet inside the county treasurer's office. The clerk slid the folder across the counter. "Parcel 47E, she said. "Back taxes, $4,221,64. Cashier's check only." I handed over the envelope, pulse steady. The stamp thudded once, paid in full, and just like that, I owned the 280-square-foot strip of dirt that fed power and water to Meadow Creek's pride and signage. Lydia met me in the parking lot, coffee in hand. "Congratulations," she said. "You just bought the HOA's throat." "Quiet leverage," I reminded her. "No gloating." She nodded. "Keep it secret until they overcommit." For the next 2 weeks I said nothing. The board continued sending fines and threatening letters, unaware that every bulb lighting their brick sign now drew current through a parcel registered to MCD Land Holdings LLC, a shell Lydia helped me form for privacy. Knowledge nugget number 4. In most states, common-use utilities crossing private land require easements. Without a recorded easement, usage is by permission and can be revoked, forcing negotiation or service relocation. Meanwhile, retaliation escalated. I woke one morning to find my mailbox unhinged, flags snapped off. Another day, a wellness check visit by local police, anonymous call claiming shouting and possible domestic disturbance. The officer was apologetic. He'd gotten 2 similar false calls on the same street that week. I documented every incident, time-stamped photos, incident numbers, badge IDs. By the 3rd week, Sarah found a post on the neighborhood forum calling me a sovereign citizen. Greg's doing, obviously. It stung not because it was ridiculous, but because it worked. People started avoiding eye contact on walks. Keene stayed loyal. "Let 'em smear," he said, wheezing his laugh. Truth survives screenshots. I kept recording. Every inspection note, every notice. My binder grew so heavy the spine cracked, but I didn't retaliate publicly. I just waited. The HOA called for a community beautification day, planning to replant the median and install a new flagpole. Their vendor list included sign lighting maintenance. That meant workers would have to access my newly purchased parcel. Perfect. The morning of the event, I parked across from the sign, pretending to weed the ditch. Trucks arrived. Volunteers milled. Greg strutted around in a blue polo, shaking hands. When a worker popped the irrigation box, I stepped forward. "Hey there," I said, showing my laminated deed. "This lot's private property. You'll need written permission." Greg marched over. "You can't stop scheduled maintenance." "I can on my land," I said, "unless you've got a recorded easement." He blinked. "This is HOA property." "No," I said, pulling the plat from my folder. "Here's 47E, recorded yesterday. The line runs exactly along your sign's footing." Keen filmed from the curb, zoom steady. "You're trespassing, boys," he called. Greg's voice cracked. "This is obstruction." "No," I replied, "it's ownership." I walked to the irrigation valve and turned it clockwise. The sprinklers hissed, coughed, then went dry. Uplights around the sign flickered off. Conversations froze. Someone dropped a shovel. Visual beat number 1. The HOA's signature sign, half-lit and wilting, against a bright Oklahoma noon. I left without another word. By sundown, the rumor mill exploded. Some said I'd cut power to the whole street, others that I'd filed an injunction. Truth was simpler. I'd revoked access until they agreed to a lawful meeting. That night, Sarah hugged me tight. "They'll come at you harder now." "I know," I said, "but this time, they'll have to come through the law." If you've ever been fined for something petty, mailbox paint, grass length, the wrong shade of curtains, tell me below. At what dollar amount does a fine stop being about community and start being about control? Because mine crossed that line months ago. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. Cease and desist. Interference with common property. Signed by Greg and 2 other board members. They gave me 48 hours to restore irrigation and lighting or face civil injunction. Lydia chuckled reading it. They're threatening suit while standing on land they don't own. Keep everything sealed and time-stamped. Countdown? I asked. 48 hours, she said. Let them waste every one. The deadline came and went. Nothing happened. No suit, no sheriff. Instead, they scheduled an emergency all-members meeting to address ongoing disruptions. I knew that was the set-piece moment Lydia had been waiting for. Bring everything, she said. Deeds, bank statements, expired filings, video logs, and Mark, keep it calm. Let them lose their temper first. The meeting was set for Thursday, 7 p.m., in the same stale clubhouse where this all started. I polished the metal clasp on my binder till it clicked smooth, like cocking a plan into place. Thursday arrived heavy with the kind of stormlight that turns asphalt silver. I could smell wet cedar from the clubhouse planters as people filed in, neighbors clutching folding chairs, Greg already at the podium, the flag limp behind him. A county deputy stood by the door, arms crossed, the neutral authority they'd invited for order. I took the back seat, binder across my knees. Sarah sat beside me, Keen behind, filming quietly. Lydia leaned near the exit, legal pad in hand. Greg's voice cut through the chatter. We're here to resolve Mr. Danner's obstruction of common assets and his continued interference with the association's duties. He sounded confident again, but his eyes darted to the deputy, gauging distance. I raised my hand. May I respond after you finish your list? He smirked. Oh, there's more than a list, Mark. We've documented harassment of contractors, defamation of board members, and vandalism, cutting power to our signage. Your signage? I asked. Interesting choice of words. He waved the binder of evidence theatrically. You're not above the law. Neither are you, I said, standing. My chair scraped the tile, loud as thunder. Because as of October 10th, your corporation was listed inactive with the Secretary of State. You have no standing to enforce anything. And this, I laid my certified deed on the table, is the parcel your lights sit on. The deputy stepped closer. Mr. Danner, is that document notarized? Certified by County Treasurer's Office. File number 122847E, I said. He examined the seal, nodded once. Greg's jaw flexed. You manipulated a technicality to disrupt the community. It's not a technicality. It's law, I replied. And since you used association funds on my property without authorization, you've opened the board to personal liability. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, neighbors exchanging looks, some recording on phones. Greg slammed the gavel. This meeting is closed. No, said the deputy evenly. It's open under your own bylaws, section 4.2. Continue, sir. Visual beat number 2, rain streaking down the clubhouse windows while the deputy stands still as a post, validating what Greg can't stop. I slid photos onto the table, expired filings, bank statements, cashed checks post-expiration, forum screenshots, each hit like a card in a dealer's rhythm. Keen couldn't resist a chuckle. That's a royal flush, boys. Greg lunged to snatch a photo. The deputy caught his wrist midair. Don't, he said. The room went silent except for the ticking wall clock. Sarah whispered, It's over. Not yet, I said. They still think they can bluff. Greg tried one last defense. Even if the filing lapsed, we can retroactively renew. The law allows reinstatement. Correct, I said, but not retroactive enforcement. Every fine, every tow threat since June is void. You owe refunds and apologies. He looked out at the room, realizing his audience wasn't backing him anymore. You'll destroy the community with this. No, I said. I'm saving it from you. When the meeting adjourned, the deputy handed me a copy of his incident report, validation in black ink. For your records, he said. Outside, thunder rolled. I tucked the report into my binder and felt the first clean breath I'd taken in months. At home that night, the harassment spiked again. A post on the HOA Facebook page called me a tax cheat. Someone tossed a half-empty paint can onto my driveway. The smell of solvent clung to the morning air. Sarah found me scrubbing the concrete. So, you could stop now, she said. You already won. I can't yet, I told her. Winning isn't fixing the paperwork. It's fixing the people who'll come after. She didn't answer, just rested her hand on my shoulder. Quiet support thicker than words. If you've followed me this far, I want your take. When power shifts, should the people who abused it face removal or redemption? Tell me below, or at least like the video so this story travels beyond Meadow Creek's fence line. Over the next week, dominoes began to tremble. The insurer called Lydia asking for clarification on active authority. The bank froze the HOA's account pending verification of corporate status. Contractors demanded back payment. Greg sent one final email to residents. We are temporarily suspending fee collection pending review. Suspending was his word for surrender. But Lydia wasn't done. They'll try to reinstate and refile, she said. You have a window to negotiate reform before they regroup. Use the leverage of that parcel. How? Offer to sell the land back for exactly $1, on conditions. I stared at her, realizing the second reversal forming like storm clouds ready to break. That night, I wrote the offer letter by hand, deliberate strokes, ink seeping slow into the paper. To the Meadow Creek Homeowners Association, inactive. I, MCD Land Holdings LLC, offer to transfer parcel 47E for $1 on condition of full community reform. I listed every term Lydia and I had discussed. Term limits for board members, open records access, quarterly audits, and a 25% rollback on dues for 12 months. At the bottom, I added one last clause, creation of a permanent community access charter, guaranteeing residents the right to attend and record all meetings. Sarah read it over my shoulder. You're trading the land for reform, she said softly. That's the plan. And if Hey, refuse? Then the lights stay off. The next morning I sent certified copies to every board member and the county ombudsman. Then I waited. For 4 days, silence. On the 5th, Greg showed up on my porch. No entourage, no sunglasses, just exhaustion behind his eyes. He looked smaller without the podium. You made your point, he said. The residents are furious. Vendors are backing out. We're broke. I didn't do that, I said. The expiration did. He rubbed his temples. What do you want, Mark? I handed him the letter. Everything in writing. $1, one signature, and the neighborhood gets a clean slate. He read it, jaw tightening at each clause. Term limits, Open audits? You're gutting the board. I'm saving it, I said. No more secret sessions, no more fines without due process. You agree, we move forward. You refuse, the parcel stays mine, and your sign stays dark. He looked toward the street where kids rode bikes past the dead uplights. For a long minute, the only sound was gravel popping under their tires. I'll call an emergency vote, he said finally. No promises. Promises are for speeches, I replied. Votes are for change. When he left, I sat on the porch steps, rain beginning to mist. Keen walked over with 2 mugs of coffee. Think he'll cave? Pressure makes people do honest math, I said. He chuckled. You ever think of running for the board yourself? I'd rather rebuild engines, I said. Less grease in politics. 2 days later, a formal notice went out. Special meeting. Charter renewal and governance vote, November 14th, 7 p.m. Same clubhouse, same fluorescent hum. But this time, half the seats were filled with residents holding copies of my letter. Before the meeting, Lydia whispered, "Stay calm. Let the facts speak." Greg opened with a monotone. Due to administrative oversight, the association failed to renew its charter. Mr. Danner has presented an offer to restore common property and implement governance reforms. We will now hear arguments. A man in the front row stood. My mom got fined for a wind chime. I vote yes. Another neighbor. I want the audits. We pay too much and see too little. One by one, voices joined, measured, frustrated, hopeful. Greg's gavel never came down. Then came the vote. 46 ballots cast, 38 in favor. The reform charter passed by 82.6%. Greg exhaled. Motion carries. I rose, walked to the podium, and laid the dollar bill on the table. Parcel 47E as promised. Recorded transfer tomorrow. Visual beat number 3 forming already. The exchange of a single worn dollar under fluorescent light. The room finally quiet. The deputy, same one from the previous hearing, watched the moment unfold and gave a slow nod. Looks lawful to me. Outside, neighbors applauded in the parking lot. Someone turned on a phone flashlight and shined it at the dark sign, joking, "Let there be light." But I didn't flip the switch yet. First, the paperwork. Lydia filed the deed transfer the next morning, and by noon the county registry showed the HOA's name back on 47E, with a footnote referencing the reform agreement. At lunch she said, "You realize you just set precedent for community governance reform through property leverage." Sounds fancier than it felt, I told her. It felt like finally breathing. If you're here watching, tell me, when an HOA breaks trust, should residents dismantle it or rebuild it with new rules? I want to know which side of that argument you stand on. That night, Sarah and I drove past the entrance. Workers were reinstalling bulbs. The sign glowed steady again, brighter than before, maybe because I knew it was finally ours in spirit, not just paperwork. Still, I sensed more fallout coming. Insurers, auditors, maybe even the county ethics board would have their say. The first domino had fallen, but the row ahead was long. The fallout came faster than I expected. By Monday, the Tulsa County Chronicle ran another headline. Meadow Creek HOA adopts reform charter after resident legal challenge. Within 48 hours, 3 local stations had called Lydia for interviews. She politely declined, telling them, "We don't grandstand victories that belong to communities." The real fireworks started when the insurer's compliance division sent an inquiry demanding copies of the new bylaws and the prior board's financials. That's when Greg's allies began resigning one by one. Treasurer first, then the secretary. The last holdout was Greg himself, clinging to a phantom title. He cornered me in the post office a few days later, voice low. "You turned this neighborhood into a circus." "No," I said. "I just switched on the lights." He shoved a letter into my hand. His resignation, dated and signed. "Maybe you can do better," he muttered before walking out into the drizzle. When I opened the letter that night, Sarah read over my shoulder. "That's it?" she asked. "That's it," I said. The domino collapsed. We sat on the porch listening to the rain ping against the gutters. Keen ambled over with a flask in one hand, thermos in the other. "Board's gone," he said, wheezing his laugh. "What now, Mr. Reform? Now we build what should have been here all along." The next week, we held an open election under the new charter. 47 residents showed up, a record turnout. A retired teacher, an accountant, a young mechanic, all elected by paper ballot, counted in plain sight. Lydia supervised as neutral counsel. When they finished, the applause felt less like victory and more like relief. Knowledge. Nugget number 5. Transparency is the cheapest insurance a community can buy. Open voting, published audits, and term limits reduce both fraud and burnout. 2 days later, the Ethics Committee, one of the anti-HOA reforms, issued its first act, a referral to the county attorney regarding misuse of association funds. It wasn't vindictive, it was procedure, justice, slow and documented. Nina, the reporter, called again. "Any comment for the follow-up?" she asked. "Just this," I said. "Sometimes you fix a system by buying 200 square feet of dirt." She laughed, said it was the best quote she'd heard all year. If you've made it this far, let's talk punishment versus prevention. When an HOA crosses into harassment, fake fines, illegal tow threats, what's the right remedy? Public accountability? Civil suits? Criminal charges? I want to see what kind of justice you believe in down below. For me, justice looked like a quiet Saturday morning 3 weeks later. Kids chalked on sidewalks again. Mrs. Franklin's oxygen van parked undisturbed. The new board opened its first meeting with coffee and open doors. Keene stood at the back, leaning on his cane, grinning. They'd asked me to chair the new compliance committee. I declined. "I'm better with paper than microphones," I said. Instead, I handed them a binder, my binder, rebuilt and relabeled Community Archive. Every document, every timestamp, indexed and dated. I told them, "Keep this honest, and you'll never need another one." After the meeting, I lingered near the relit sign. A faint buzz came from the new LED transformer, cleaner than the old hum. The engraved gold letters read brighter now against the brick, maybe because I knew they'd been earned. Sarah slipped her arm through mine. "So, no more late-night legal raids?" "Not unless someone tries to charge for Christmas lights," I said. She laughed, the kind of laugh that means healing has finally begun. Still, a part of me watched the quiet too carefully, like a mechanic listening for a misfire that isn't there yet. Change is fragile until it's tested, and I knew another test would come, somewhere, some other neighborhood, another clipboard war waiting to happen. The test came sooner than anyone expected. A month later, the county issued its final report on Meadow Creek, confirmed misuse of $18,400 in dues for unauthorized legal expenses, 2 board members accepting plea deals for falsified filings, and a consent decree mandating external audits for 5 years. It wasn't a headline-grabbing scandal, just the kind of quiet accountability most people never notice. But for us, it meant closure. I kept a copy of that report folded in my wallet, not as a trophy, but as proof that persistence, documented and lawful, can outlast intimidation. On the first Monday of the new year, we held a small ceremony at the entrance. Kids from the neighborhood helped repaint the signposts, and the new board unveiled a plaque. Community Reform by Residents, November 2024. I didn't give a speech. Lydia did, short, calm, precise. "Transparency is not rebellion," she said into the microphone. "It's stewardship." The line stuck. Keene handed me his old thermos afterward. "For your next case," he said, grinning, "every community's got one." He wasn't wrong. Word of our reform spread. People from neighboring subdivisions started calling, asking how to check their covenants, how to request audits, how to stand up without breaking rules. I'd started something bigger without planning to. If you believe I fought the right way and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend. Maybe the one still fighting their HOA, still paying unfair fines, still afraid to ask questions. Subscribe so the next story reaches you first. And as responsible neighbors, share this so others learn that lawful courage changes more than anger ever could. That part's on us. That spring, Sarah and I finally took the truck on the road trip my brother and I had planned before he got sick. The sky opened wide above Route 412, the kind of Oklahoma BUA you could fall into. At a gas stop, I found the old wrench keychain in my pocket, the metal warm from my palm. "Think he'd be proud?" Sarah asked quietly. "He'd laugh that it all started over parking," I said. We drove west until the sun dropped low and the horizon turned copper. Somewhere between towns, a song came on the radio, one my brother used to hum under his breath while tightening bolts. I let it play, thinking how justice, like good mechanics, is mostly patience and the right tools. Back home, Meadow Creek looked different. Not perfect, nothing ever is, but alive. The new board hosted a community day with barbecue and local vendors. Mrs. Franklin donated plants for the median. Kids painted benches in mismatched colors that somehow worked together. In the clubhouse, where once I'd been accused and shouted down, now hung a framed page. Meadow Creek Open Governance Charter. Beneath it, my $1 bill, laminated, taped with a note. Property traded for fairness, 2024. I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. The last thing I did before leaving that night was switch off the lights on the sign, then back on again, just to hear the hum settle into silence, steady and earned. Next case? Maybe yours.